Okay. When people talk about immigration, usually do it in a negative tone. How can we turn the debate around?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that all people talk about migration in a negative tone. The general and aggregate picture at a country level does or often can look quite negative depending on which country or which region we're looking at, but that very aggregated picture hides differences within the region or within the country. So within countries, you'd usually have a share of the population that's quite positive about migration, actually. And this can be, let's say, 20%, 20 to 30%, depending on the country. And then you also have a share of the population that's quite negative about migration. And this is, again, a similar share. And then you have a huge share in between who are not so sure about migration. So if you only look at the aggregate picture, you miss what's in the middle and what's at either end. And the reasons why some of these people can have quite negative attitudes is because, well, part of it is misinformation. So they just don't really know what's happening. They don't know the impacts of migration. But also partially it's driven by real concerns. And these concerns can be directly linked to migration. For example, they may feel like they've lost their job because of migration, but they can also be linked to much broader issues that in their mind are linked to migration but may not be. So for example, globalization or changes in the economy. And because of these issues and because they generally feel insecure, they may be worried about migration. So the way to tackle these attitudes, well, that's a huge question. But one of the ways to go about this is to not try and change everyone's attitudes, but to look at these very specific groups and to look at what their specific concerns are, and then to tap into these concerns. And part of that is also not just talking about migration, but also considering these other worries and concerns that they have.
And what can we do to reduce the concerns about immigration?
So that's part of what I was trying to get at just now. So looking at specific subgroups rather than targeting the whole population as a whole, considering the whole wide range of concerns and not just concerns around migration, but for example, concerns about the labor market as well. Something else we can do is also not just try and hit them with facts and evidence, because we find that people often don't really relate to facts and evidence. Even if you present them with actual facts, they often don't believe it. And what they're more likely to listen to are stories. They're influenced by values, by emotions. So by letting them hear migrants' voices, by letting them hear real stories, we're more likely to reach them. But in that, it's also very important to not paint an overly rosy picture of migration, but to show what it's actually like. So to give actual real stories.
Mm-hmm. We usually say that there are more immigration that actually we have. Why we have this trend?
So I think in a way that's linked to these same worries, to these same concerns. And it's quite interesting that when you ask people what's the share of immigrations in your home country, they often overestimate it. For example, last week, Eurostat published some statistics where they showed that on average, people in European countries overestimated the share of migrants in the economy by a factor of 2. And the reason why they often get it wrong is because they think about it in a very emotional way. They also often don't believe the evidence that's out there, but also they often conflate the issue of migration with other worries and concerns that they have. So they just feel like migration is a much bigger issue than it actually is, and that shapes so many aspects of their life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.